everyone. Welcome to today's focus session on our brand new quality center. My name is Adrielle. I'm from the onboarding team here at OwnerRez. Before we proceed, if I could just get one or two people to let me know in the chat if you can hear and see the presentation, that would be great. And then we'll go ahead and get started. Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. If you're new to these webinars and you're not sure where to access the chat, you should see it on the left side of your screen, and you should see a tab for chat as well as a tab for Q&A. And if you don't see that on the left side of your screen, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a row of buttons, and one of them looks like a text message icon. If you click on that, it'll pull up the chat. And you can make comments there. If you have a question, you can put it in the question and answer section. But don't worry if you accidentally post a question in the chat, we'll still get to it at the end of today's focus session. All right, so without further ado, let me show you all this quality center, and we'll also be going over reviews today. Within the quality center, there are a few different sections. So we have our overview dashboard, we have the review section, listing health, sentiment, and the analyzer. So we're just going to go in order, and I'll show you all the different aspects of each of those things. If you are not sure how to access the quality center from within your OwnerRez account, you can find it in the left-hand side, this black sidebar. If you have it collapsed, it'll look like that. If you have it open, it'll look like this. And you'll look for this sparkle symbol and then click on Quality Center. And it'll bring you first to the overview page. So it's going to default to a year for the time frame. And then if you are a PM with multiple owners, it'll default to showing all owners. And then if you want to filter that, you can filter it by your different owners as well as, like I just said, by the time frame. One thing to know is that the sentiment analysis, anytime we refer to sentiment throughout today's focus session, that is a feature of Resi AI. So you need to have the Resi AI premium feature turned on in order to get any of that sentiment analysis. But there are other aspects of this quality center that are available to you without Resi AI. So first up here at the top, you're going to see some at a glance settings. So you'll see that you have guest reviews set to automatically show 5-star only, and we'll dive into this a little bit more when we get to the reviews tab of the quality center. And then for host reviews, you'll see that you have smart reviews active for Airbnb and Vrbo. And then your sentiment analysis, you can see was last updated 29 days ago, and the latest time that you ran the analyzer. So just some at a glance things right there on the dashboard. Next, scrolling down, you can see for this time frame that we're looking at, which again is the past year, you have 4.8 stars overall. So that's really awesome. And you'll see your review spread. You'll see how many 5-star, 4-star, so on and so forth reviews you've received across all the properties. And then you'll see your Airbnb listing health, assuming that you are API integrated with Airbnb, and any achievements that you have. So if you are a super host on Airbnb, you'd see that here. If you have any guest favorite listings, you'd see that here along with the number of guest favorite listings that you have on Airbnb. And then you'll see your average review score over time. So you can look and see when there's any dips in your average reviews, kind of get at a glance how you're doing with your portfolio. And then you'll get some even deeper insights right below that with the 5-star review rate. So this is the percentage of reviews that you're getting that are 4.5 stars or more. And you'll be able to pay attention if there's any dips. Maybe there's some seasonal things going on at your properties or other issues that need to be addressed. And then you'll also see your rate as a host. How consistently are you leaving reviews for your guests? Next, this is one of my favorite sections, is the category ratings. So this will show you on this little spider web what's being positive from your guests. So you'll see the little categories have different colors that correspond to the different listing sites. So as I'm sure you're all aware, Airbnb asks the guest about certain specific things like value, location, communication, cleanliness, so on and so forth. But they do ask about some things that other listing sites might not ask about. So accuracy, cleanliness, and communication are things that all the channels ask about when a guest is leaving a review. But these three, location, value, arrival, are unique to Airbnb guest reviews. And then you'll see that room cleanliness is unique to Verbo, and then Expedia has some other unique categories that they specifically ask about as well. So the further out the item is on the spider web, the more positive the reviews are in those categories. And then as it gets dropped in, you can see it goes from 5 stars to 4, 3, 2, and 1. So if you have an area where maybe that spider web is going inward quite a bit, that might be something for you to look into and see what's going on and how you might be able to improve that. Then we have our top positive highlights and top negative highlights. This is another really great section. It's always nice to know what you're doing well, but the real value, in my opinion, is in these top negative highlights. You can quickly see how many issues there are with specific things, and then you can click into that to get more data on that issue and some of the recent comments, as well as information on the specific properties that those negative comments or negative feedback have been given for. And then you can address any potential issues with your cleaners or your maintenance staff, whatever that issue is. You will be able to just make really good use of this feedback to improve all of your operations and then therefore improve your guest experience. Next, you can see even more of a view into the review categories. So again, from up here, this was kind of your overview of it. Here is a little bit of a deep dive into it, and you get just more visibility. So you can see we had 3 reviews giving negative feedback on accuracy, 3 on positive feedback on accuracy. So again, another area where you can quickly see things that you may need to pay attention to and see whether you need to improve maybe the accuracy of your listing, maybe some of the amenities could be improved, or again, you need to address things with your cleaners or maintenance. And then here you can see an overview of your guest sentiment by month. And so very quickly at a glance, you can see whether guests are having a positive, neutral, or negative experience. And then if you hover over these little categories, you can see the number of guests with those different types of experience. So we can see in March 2 negative, 32 neutral, and 10 positive. And again, as a reminder, the sentiment is something that is powered by Resi AI. And here in the bottom section, you can see if there have been any recent sentiment problems. So you can see some of the properties and then any issues by month. Moving on to the reviews tab of your quality center. At the very top, you'll see 231 total highlights in your reviews, the percentage of positive reviews, and then your top category that you get positive feedback on. So this user is obviously doing very well with their check-in instructions and procedures. Here, again, you'll see your category distribution of positive feedback. So we can see that maybe there are some cleanliness things that could be addressed and improved, maybe some accuracy on the listing. Communication's pretty good, but some room for improvement. Location, same thing. And here you can see where your negative feedback is coming from. Then you'll see your positive highlights and your negative highlights. So again, you can click into these to get more visibility. There's just 1 review on these and 3 on that. And then on your positive highlights, you can see what you're doing well, what you can continue doing well, maybe some kudos to give to your team on what they're doing well, all at a glance. Then we have our highlight constellations. So this is a fun one because it shows you what you're really doing well. Again, we already know the check-in experience: clean, scenic, lots to do and walkable, as promised, good accuracy, and great host, responsive, good communication, all of that. And then some areas that you may need to watch. So there's been some cleanliness concerns, some location concerns, and you can decide whether or not those are things that need to be addressed. Again, as hosts, we know there's always going to be some outliers there. So you may review this and say, oh, no, that's just that one guest was kind of weird. And it's not anything that needs to be addressed, but it's still good information to have in case there is something that comes up that you need to take care of. And then there's your property archetype. So this section will only show if you have at least 5 properties with at least 20 review highlights. But this is really cool because it gives you, like, Backwater Bungalow is doing really well with the smooth arrivals, so on and so forth. And then a lot of these things can be clicked into for further information. So if you want to go into the negative highlights, you can click on that. So it shows you the trend over time and then shows you other comments that it will appear with and any properties that have that concern. So that's the review highlights tab. If we go to the review guest reviews tab, this is where you can actually see all of the reviews that your guests have left. And you can, on an individual basis, choose whether or not to show or hide a review. And the way you would do that is you would check the box next to that particular review and then click either show or hide here, whichever button you want. The other thing you can do is you can turn on auto show so that it is already turned on for this account. But if you wanted to change those settings, you can say automatically show only 5-star reviews, or show reviews that are 4 stars or more, or show all reviews regardless of rating. This does not obviously control whether or not the reviews show up on the listing sites that review is left on, but it will control whether or not that review is going to show up in your hosted website or in your widget if you're using our reviews widget on a custom website. So that is where that can come into play. And then on the host reviews, this is really cool. And in my opinion, one of the, I don't want to say most powerful, but most helpful and maybe underutilized features of your OwnerRez account is the host reviews area. This is a huge time saver as a host, and it takes a task off your plate that, remembering to leave reviews for hosts can be so time consuming. So with OwnerRez, it will happen automatically. And now Airbnb Smart Reviews is turned on by default. And then you can turn on Vrbo Smart Reviews as well. So what this does for you is after a guest leaves, OwnerRez will automatically publish your review of that guest. And there are some settings you can put on that so that OwnerRez will not leave a review for a guest that you don't want to review, or maybe you need to leave a negative review for that guest. So let's take a look at the settings that are available if you turn on Vrbo Smart Reviews. It's going to default to leaving that review 5 days after departure, and you can change that if you'd like. And then it'll automatically skip bookings that, obviously, if it's canceled. If the guest has a problem flag was turned on, that review will be skipped, or if there was an amount kept from the security deposit. And then if you have Resi AI, it'll also skip leaving reviews for bookings that have a negative sentiment. You can also choose to skip any bookings that meet these other criteria. And the booking or guest is tagged. If you have maybe a tag created in your account for problem guest or do not rent, you can select the appropriate tag. So we would say maybe they're a complaining guest or something like that. You could select that tag, and then OwnerRez would automatically skip the review for that guest. Now, the guest has a problem flag was turned on. Let me show you all where you would do that if you ever needed to. So in a booking, once you have a booking opened, you can go over here on the right-hand side to the notes section, click on that pencil icon, and then check the box for guest has a problem. And then that would meet that criteria of skipping any reviews where the guest has a problem flag was turned on. Then you would just, once these settings are all set the way you want, you just click turn on Vrbo Smart Reviews. And now, in addition to leaving reviews for your Airbnb guests, OwnerRez will also leave reviews for your Vrbo guests. One other thing to know in this section is that there are templates for the reviews so that you're not leaving the same review for every single guest. This would apply to Airbnb. Vrbo doesn't do written host reviews, but Airbnb does. So these templates here would be the comments that are left. And I apologize, it's taking a moment to load. I'm in a test environment today. There we go. All right, so these are all the different templates that are going to be in your account, and you can edit them here if you'd like. We make use of field codes to make the review seem personalized, even though it's fully automated. It'll insert the guest name here, for example. It'll say the number of guests that they had. Other versions of the comments might mention the number of nights that the guest stayed, all filled in, and it just makes it seem like you are actually personally reviewing that guest, which is really cool. And here under Airbnb Smart Review settings, you can randomly select from any of those templates that we just looked at, or you can tell the system to only use one of these templates, and then you can select the specific templates that you want OwnerRez to rotate through or randomly select from when leaving reviews for your guests. So it's very customizable and still gives that personal touch from the guest side of things. The next to look at here on the Quality Center is the listing health. So here you can see at a glance how all of your properties are doing from a listing health standpoint. So you'll be able to see the overall rating again, overall sentiment, quality health. So this is going to come from your account being API integrated with Airbnb. If there's any issues with your properties being in good standing or any other issues or alerts that need to be addressed there. And then the property, it's going to give you at a glance the review score for each property, and also whether or not that average review score has been going down. So you can take a look at that. And then also with the sentiment, it's going to show you whether guest sentiment has been trending up or down and what the current average sentiment is for each property. So lots of really good data here. And then if you have enough data in your account, again, I'm in a test environment, so it's not showing quite everything that you might see in your account, but it'll show you comparisons against your comp set and whether or not the property has a guest favorite status on Airbnb. Here, there's various filters that you can apply. So you can look at individual properties. You can change that time frame, filter by quality, status, sentiment, channel, or specific owners. And then the next section is the guest sentiment section. So this is going to give you some really good insights into how guests are feeling about their stays and where you might have room for improvement. So overall sentiment, number of bookings analyzed, negative rate, and then sentiment by property over the last few months, because I'm looking at the last 90 days now. And then it also show you if that average is trending up or down here. Here in the bookings with negative sentiment, it's going to give you just some information on why that guest maybe had a negative sentiment. So it'll summarize for you what issues they were experiencing. Last thing I want to look at is the analyzer. So this is our listing quality analyzer, and it can now be accessed here through the Quality Center and the Analyzer tab. You can also still find it under the Tools menu in the upper right corner of your account. And this is a really great way to make sure that your listings are as complete and accurate as possible. We still recommend that you review them from time to time, but this can be a nice little quick hit way to check on things. So with 14 channels, I'm only going to run it for one property right now. And let's go ahead and analyze that and see what comes up and if there's anything that needs to be addressed. Okay, so there is an error on the photo size. So that might be something we need to look at. In general, as long as the photo looks really good on your computer and is high resolution and looks good on your screen, on a computer screen, you may not need to replace it, but something to consider doing. If you have a higher resolution version of that photo, you may want to replace that in your account. And then for surcharges, there's just some warnings here. You can go ahead and review that. Maybe this property allows pets and they don't charge a pet fee, in which case you can ignore this warning. And then the warning about booking.com content, just make sure that you've filled that in on booking.com and you're good there. And then just some informational at a glance items here. So really this property is in great shape and we don't need to make any changes here. But still nice to run that analyzer, especially if you notice that a review or that a property is experiencing negative guest sentiment around accuracy or having some bad reviews. You can run that listing quality analyzer and see if maybe there's something that comes up here that can be easy to fix. And so that brings us to the end of today's webinar on the Quality Center and reviews. And I did hear the chat popping off, so I'm going to look over there for some questions. If you do have any questions, feel free to go ahead and post those now. And while I give you all a moment to do that, I want to just review some of the resources that we have here at OwnerRez for you. We have our support team that you can always email, help@ownerrez.com. We also have our support center. You can find all of our support documents at ownerrez.com/support. We also have Ask Rezi, which is our AI-powered support chat. And you can find that at ownerrez.com/support/chat. Ask Rezi is a separate feature from Rezi AI. It is completely free to all of our users. You just have to be logged into your account in order to use Ask Rezi. So again, that's ownerrez.com/support/chat. And then we have our support videos, ownerrez.com/support/videos. Zach from our marketing team has been doing a really great job in getting all of our support videos updated. So highly recommend that you check those out. And then we have our forums, ownerrez.com/forums. This is where you can stay up to date on all of our latest news, updates, new integrations, new partnerships. We do user profiles of your fellow OwnerRez users from time to time. And then every 2 weeks, we're also releasing new podcast episodes from Chris and Paul's Walk and Talk podcast. So if you haven't listened to that, it's very, very interesting. I highly recommend it. And then we also have our blog. I'm sorry, I mixed those two up. ownerrez.com/forums is where you can chat with other users and get feedback on ideas. ownerrez.com/blog is all the other stuff that I just said. And then we have our webinars page, ownerrez.com/webinars, and that's where you can find recordings of past focus sessions, as well as upcoming webinars with partners, upcoming demos, and upcoming Q&A sessions as well. All right, let me go over into the Q&A and see if we have any questions there. What is the time frame of the reviews shown? This is a question from Roxana. So the reviews, it's going to show all of the reviews that have ever come into your OwnerRez account, and they will show up when the guest leaves the review. So these two here are not showing because these guests have not left reviews yet, I'm assuming. And then your host review will show once the host review has been published as well. So that's the time frame there. And then Peter is saying, I've had a few negative sentiments from guests that were not accurate negative sentiments. For example, a guest is sorry but must cancel the booking for their own reasons. AI is reading it as negative. Will there be ability to train the AI to understand real sentiments versus normal communication? And then a follow-up to that, another question is adjusting the negative if it's not a legitimate negative. Example, alarm goes off every time this one guest cooks. Okay, so Peter says, maybe what I'm asking for is a negative solved button. So yeah, that might be something that you want to put in our forums. We have a feature request forum. So again, go to ownerrez.com/forums, scroll down to the bottom to find that feature request forum, and I would post that suggestion there. That's really good feedback though, so thank you for sharing that information. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, so I'm just going to scroll through the chat real quick and see if there are any questions in the chat. It looks like, Roxana, you were asking why it says ineligible for all reviews on your dashboard, and Zach is suggesting that you reach out to help@ownerrez.com, so that's great. And then you wanted to know what the templates apply to. So let me go back over that. Here on the host reviews section, when OwnerRez is leaving a review on your behalf for Airbnb guests, Airbnb always wants to have some comments from the host. And so these templates are the host comments that would be left in those Airbnb reviews. And there we go. Here they are. So you can make changes to them if you want, or you can just leave them as is. And then see if there's any other questions here. Catherine is saying you had a review removed on Airbnb, but it is still in OwnerRez. Does it update after it's no longer showing on Airbnb? I don't actually know the question to that, or the answer to that question. I would suggest reaching out to our help desk. They may be able to help you with that. You can always, though, it's kind of nice, I think, to have a record of that review, even though it was removed on Airbnb. Still have it in your account and keep it as a record, but you can always find that review in your account and check the box here and then mark hide. So it won't ever show up on your hosted website if you have one, or in a reviews widget if you use that. It'll just live in your OwnerRez account as kind of a historical record of what happened. Hopefully that helps. If not, you can always reach out to our support team for more information or to share more concerns about it. help@ownerrez.com. All right, I don't see any other questions today. Oh, nope, I just saw one come in from Joyce. Just curious why only Airbnb reviews are appearing under the host reviews section. Am I missing something in the setting? So what I would double check here is first, are you API connected to any other channels? If you're only API connected to Airbnb, you'd only see Airbnb here. If you are API connected with Vrbo, then you should have the option to turn on Vrbo Smart Reviews, and that will show up here. Let me show you what it looks like when it's turned off. It is grayed out. So you would just click on that in order to be able to turn it on. We only have smart host reviews for Airbnb and Vrbo. So if you're not on Vrbo and you're only on Airbnb, that would be why you're only seeing those Airbnb host reviews there. If you are API connected to Vrbo and you're not seeing this, I would encourage you to reach out to our support team so we can take a look into your account and see what else might be going on. All right, and let me double check one more time. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So thank you all so much for being here. And I hope to see you at the next focus session in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.